video, we're going to be talking about our MBE frequency chart. More specifically, those highly tested topics on the multiple choice portion of your bar exam. So first things first, remember that the MBE subjects themselves are tested equally. So let's just recap those MBE subjects. There are 7 of them: civil procedure, constitutional law, contracts and sales, criminal law and criminal procedure, evidence, real property, and torts. So when I say these subjects are tested equally, that means each subject has 25 scored questions. So remember, the examiners score 175 out of 200 questions. That means you'll encounter 25 experimental questions that can come from any of these subjects or any of the topics we're about to discuss. So now that you know all of the MBE subjects themselves are tested equally, it's good to know that the topics within each subject are not. And this is really helpful to make sure you're prioritizing when you review. Remember, the best way to maximize your chances of being successful on the bar exam is to study smart. So let's talk about these highly tested topics. And as you can see from our frequency chart, I'm just going to take them in order. The first subject we come to is civil procedure. So the topics within civil procedure are jurisdiction and venue, pretrial procedures, motions, law applied by federal courts, jury trials, verdicts and judgments, appealability, and review. And more specifically, this chart tells you that jurisdiction, venue, pretrial procedures, and motions are all tied for the most highly tested topics within this subject, each making up about 5 to 6 of your scored 25 questions. Look at constitutional law. The topics within constitutional law are individual rights, the nature of judicial review, the separation of powers, and the relation of nation and states in a federal system, or federalism. And the chart tells us that individual rights makes up 50% of your scored constitutional law questions, or 12 to 13 of your 25. Look at contracts. The topics within it are formation of contracts, performance, breach, and discharge, defenses to enforceability, contract content and meaning, remedies, and third-party rights. And the chart tells us that formation and then performance, breach, and discharge are tied for first place. Those topics each receiving 6 to 7 scored questions, or 25 total percent of your contracts questions. Look at criminal law and criminal procedure. The chart tells us that the topics within it are the constitutional protections of the accused, homicide, other crimes, inchoate crimes, as well as parties, and general principles of criminal law. And the chart tells us that the constitutional protections for the accused makes up 50% of your scored questions. Look at evidence. The relevancy and reasons for excluding relevant evidence, hearsay, presentation of evidence, privileges and policy exclusions, and writings, recordings, and photographs are your topics within this subject. And you can see that relevancy is the most highly tested topic, receiving 8 to 9 scored questions. And then you can see hearsay and presentation of evidence being tied at second place together, each making up about 25% of your total evidence questions. So when I approach evidence, I would recommend looking at relevancy, hearsay, and the presentation of evidence, as it's going to make up the vast majority of your scored questions here. Now look at real property. Real property is very unique. You can see here that the topics within real property are the ownership of real property, the rights in real property, real estate contracts, mortgages and security devices, and titles. And each of these topics is tested equally, making up about 20% of your total questions, or 5 to 6 questions total per topic. So here with real property, you want to make sure that you are paying equal attention to these topics. Just make sure you're not getting caught up in subtopics within each. So for example, don't overly obsess over future and present interests or the rule against perpetuities, because you're not likely going to get many questions on each of those subtopics respectfully, in light of the fact that these topics are tested equally throughout real property. And then lastly, torts. So the subtopics or topics within torts are things like negligence, intentional torts, strict liability, as well as products liability and other torts. And here you can see that negligence is the most highly tested topic, receiving about 12 to 13 of your scored 25 questions. So remember, prioritizing topics when you study your subjects is the best way to maximize your chances of success. If you do this, you're studying efficiently. Best of luck.